Hi there. My name is Mark Colgan. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at TaskDrive, and I really wanted to put together a short guide on how you can use webinars to help with your demand generation and even with your outbound prospecting. So in this video, I'll be sharing really like a minimum viable webinar funnel and the step-by-step guides that you can follow to create a webinar for your company. So in this guide, we're going to go through a number of different steps, but first of all, I wanted to just mention why webinars. Well, now more than ever, they can play such a valuable role in your demand gen. And as we experience the fallout of the coronavirus and the impact it has on the live events and in-person meetings, webinars can play a very important role in bridging that gap. However, many people struggle to understand how to orchestrate and set up a webinar flow or funnel and execute on the strategy. And if it is your first time and you don't have the support of a demand generation manager or marketing manager, then I hope this guide can help you understand how you go about creating one. And really, it has three main steps. So the first is planning. Plan your webinar and all the necessary steps in that. Building and creating the content and setting up the webinar. And I'll show you how I'm going to use Demio to do this. And then also promoting the webinar to prospects, clients, and ideal customers. So a lot of the times the technology required can be quite challenging and overwhelming, but as a bare minimum, there are 4 different technologies that you need. So you need a webinar software. In this case, I'll use Demio. Your CRM, which I'll use Pipedrive because that's what we use at TaskDrive. The cold email outreach tool, which is Reply.io, and then integration software. And I'll be showing you how to set up Zapier and some of the automations that you may want to set up. So really, this is what we're trying to create. We're creating a funnel where we have traffic from paid ads or inbound from social and cold email to go to a landing page where the webinar is. They'll also have a thank you page, and we'll set up a number of emails that go out to each of the individuals that sign up. Then there's the live webinar, and you can put together a call to action at the end of the webinar. And that might be offering a free consultation or a demo, whatever it is that suits your business. And then also what you do after the webinar. So retargeting those people who have signed up but didn't show up, or even those people that didn't respond to your initial outreach but still would find value in the content. So to begin, we start with the planning phase, and there's a number of things that you need to think about when you're planning your webinar strategy. And the first place to start is your audience. So you really need to understand who you want to target with the webinar. So which roles are you hoping to create content for? What's their seniority? What are their challenges? And if you're unsure of some of their challenges, a really good tip is to read the job descriptions of your target audience, because in those job descriptions, you'll find out the day-to-day responsibilities as well as the objectives that they have been set in their role. And I would personally recommend you make it a habit to look at job descriptions on a weekly basis. I have a recurring calendar appointment in my diary that has links to saved searches for the key targets that the key jobs that we target. So I can always be on top of and understand what they're going through in their role. You also want to think about what companies do you want to target. So which locations, what size of companies, what industry verticals. And then you also need to think about where does your audience spend time online? Do they use social media? If so, which channels or platforms? Are there any trade associations and groups that belong to those associations? And what blogs do they read? What content are they consuming? And that can really help you when it comes to designing the webinar content. Think about what topic you want to talk about and why your audience should care or would care. You really want to make sure that you're producing valuable content to that audience. And you want to make sure that the content doesn't just promote your product or your service. Don't do that. Don't make the webinar a pitch about your product or service. But you want to create something that genuinely helps your audience. So think about what questions do your clients or potential audience frequently ask, and what are your strengths, and what could you create that is entertaining for you to teach? What do you enjoy doing? And then think about the questions that you could ask throughout your webinar, because you can use polls within the webinar to ask questions, and that can be a very good way not only for engagement but for you to understand what your customers are currently doing within their sales or marketing or whatever audience that you're targeting. So in this example, I'm going to be using the 14 lead sourcing playbooks for B2B companies. These are 14 strategies that we designed here at TaskDrive that helps companies source more leads, especially when we're looking at triggers and signals in the market to identify people who are interested in a topic or maybe interested in buying a solution. So gone are the days where you said you should be sending the same email to 2,000 people just because they match their job title is marketing manager. At any one time, only 3% of your total addressable market are actively buying. That means that 97% of your audience aren't buying right now. So these lead sourcing playbooks are all about finding those triggers and signals. And that's why these playbooks turn into be quite a valuable piece of content for our audience. So I'll use this throughout the example. So there are a number of things that you need to create, especially around the messaging and content. So you will have a webinar landing page, a thank you page, the emails for reminding people to join the webinar, the content of the webinar itself, cold email messaging. So that's for you to send out messages to tell people about the webinar and invite them to join. Social media posts, which you can use pre and post webinar. So building up to the webinar and then also sharing the content and distributing that after. And then ad copy and creative if you're thinking of using paid ads to support the promotion and amplification of your webinar. So before we move on, I want to talk about the webinar platform. So when it comes to webinar platforms, there are a number of different solutions out there. However, the one that I really like, mainly because it was built by marketers for marketers, is Demio. And unfortunately, I had recorded this video. This is my second time recording this video where I walked through step by step of how to set up a Demio webinar. However, Loom, for whatever reason, stopped working and I lost about 20 minutes of video. So what you can see here is that I've actually created a webinar already. But what I'll do is go and recreate that for you. So let me just pull up the live page. And then I'm going to go back to schedule and I'm going to create a new session. So bear with me 1 second. So, it's giving me a tooltip, but let me add new event. So this is Demio. I've signed up. I'm just using the free trial at the moment, but obviously would convert to a paying customer if I was running these webinars. So first of all, what type of event do I want to create? So I really want to create a live event. So it's just the standard. And the name of the event is going to be 14 lead sourcing playbooks for B2B SaaS companies. I probably would come up with something a little bit more creative than that, but just for the purpose of this example, I'm going to keep it quite simple. So when is this happening? So I'm going to schedule the event. I'm going to schedule it for Thursday, the 2nd of April. And the time is going to be 3 p.m. So I'm going to add event to the schedule. So we can see, obviously, no registrants just yet, but I've got the date and time ready. Now, you could run multiple webinars, but for this example, we'll just keep it to one. And now I want to customize the landing pages that I spoke about and those emails that I want to send out to customers once they've signed up. So the first phase is the registration. And here you can see when I've clicked on registration, I can edit the landing page, I can edit the form fields and also change some of the settings here. So first of all, I'm going to update the registration page. And you can see that I've got the title that I added before. And if I click on branding, I'm not sure if I can change this because I'm using the free version, but let's see if I can. Oh, let me just go back. There's an icon that I want to use. There we go. This one. So this should update shortly. So yeah, we can see the TaskDrive logo. I can also change the color scheme as well. So I'm going to change this color to the TaskDrive color, which is just a slightly more green one than Demio. And so yeah, I've got the branding set up. And now I can add in different elements. So I may want to add in a subheadline. So I can enter a subheadline here. Again, I'm just going to pull the information I had created originally. again, it's not perfect, but it will do for the demonstration. I can add a video, so I may want to pre-record a video. I haven't done that, but that could be an option for me. Then there's also a description as well that I could add. So I've actually pasted that already. And this is just a bit of a blurb about what the webinar will be about. So go back, paste that in, save the description. And the last thing I can do is actually share the add a presenter. So I'm going to put in my name, because it's me that's presenting, Chief Revenue Officer, website, and I actually pulled a quick bio. I'll add that in there, and I can upload a photo as well. So my photo's been uploaded, I'm ready. So I'm going to add presenter, and we can see that it's already there. And this is what the page looks like. So this is just a demo, but if I was to look at that as it was live, it would look pretty much exactly the same. And you can see that we're counting down to the day of the demo, of the webinar, apologies. So one of the things that we probably want to change though is the fields that we want people to sign up. Now, if you're in the B2B space, you may be more interested in finding out obviously their first name, email, but also their job title and company. So that's something that we can focus on. So if I just save and close this and then edit form fields, I can actually add in new form fields here. So the first one is going to be job title, and I'm going to make that required. Just gonna put that down, and then company. Now, depending on your tech stack, you might have a tool like Clearbit or some other data enrichment tool behind the scenes that can enrich the company name. I would always recommend to add less fields on the form, because it will increase the amount of people that sign up, but keep it to the bare minimum that you need. So in this case, it's just going to be these four fields. And then if I go to settings, we don't need to worry about that. The one thing that we can actually change, if I go back to customize, is you'll see that there's a social snippet here. So this is what will show up when you share the link to the webinar registration. Now, I actually created a very quick version or image in Canva, which is a graphic design tool. So I'm just going to upload that now. This is one I created previously. And it just makes it look a little bit different to the upcoming live event. So you'll see that when it loads up in a second. And obviously I can change the description here as well and make it a little bit more catchy for when we're sharing on social media. However, here's the featured image that will be shared when it's posted on social. So I'm going to save that. And that's just really good from a conversion point of view, that you're not sharing just the standard template from Demio. You're making it more specific to your event, your webinar. So that's the registration process completed. I think we've spent less than 10 minutes on this at the moment. And let me just see if there's anything else that we would like to change. I think we've got the registration page okay. So email notifications. So here are the standard email notifications that are set up by Demio. What's great is that you can send an instant confirmation and edit the email. And here you can write in any additional text that you'd like. If I just go back to my previous one, so I've just added in a bit of custom text saying we're really looking forward to you joining this webinar. If you have any questions ahead of the webinar, please feel free to send them to me at mark@taskdrive. And you can do that and save the notifications for all of these emails here. And another thing that you can do as well is send an automatic link to the replay once people have attended or no-shows. It's okay to send it to all registrants. A lot of people sign up for webinars to receive the replays. So not everybody can make the times. Not everybody can block out an hour if that's how long your webinar is going to be. So always send the replays to people. And you can turn that on and actually edit the email here. And one thing that, if I just go back to my last one that I created earlier, and again, I'm going to paste in what I said before. So if you have any questions about about how these playbooks can help you with your lead sourcing, please let me know. I'd be more than happy to share how our customers are implementing these strategies to generate a consistent flow of qualified leads each week. Now, the webinar is an opportunity for you to show your credibility and share valuable content, but it can also be used as a way for you to generate leads. So I personally believe after you've delivered some value and you've given your time and it's been useful for your audience, you can ask for people to book a call or to get in touch with you. This is probably still a bit of a softer approach than saying book a demo or book a free call, but it is giving people the opportunity to reply to this email, and then they can start that conversation with you. I haven't edited some of these, but you can add some things in here to make it a little bit more personal and maybe to resonate with your brand personality as well. But for the time being, I'm going to say that those are done. So this is where Demio really shines. So you can actually prepare all of the content before the webinar, before the webinar's live. So you can actually add polls and where you can add in particular questions with the options. So for me, for lead sourcing, I might ask the question, how are you currently sourcing leads? It could be LinkedIn, it could be databases like ZoomInfo or Discover.org, Datafox. I could add another option, which is buying lists, or whatever the options may be. And you can also add in the presentation materials as well. So you can upload your slides or videos to Demio so that you have them there ready to go when you are delivering your webinar. And settings here, you can just change whether it's a public chat or private chat, and you can actually set a redirect on completion. So once the session ends, you could redirect them to your home page or to an additional piece of content or another page on your website, which would be more useful for the customers, for the webinar attendees. Just going to turn that off for now. Event admins, that's just me. I'm the only one on here. If I was inviting a guest to speak, then I could also add them as a presenter or moderator and save that and send them an invite. And then integration. So we're going to talk about integrations shortly. One of the things that we need to make sure is that we're collecting the leads when people sign up to the webinar and they're added to our CRM, which in this case is Pipedrive. But as you can see, that was quite a simple process to get everything set up from a webinar point of view. And now that that's saved, I'm ready to start sharing this link and the information about the webinar with my prospects. So now that the webinar is ready and I'm ready to share it, we can talk about cold email. And I believe cold email is one of the best ways to reach an audience that you may not already have their email addresses from, people that don't already exist in your CRM. And you can target your messages and make it very relevant to them as individuals who have the challenge, who are experiencing the challenges and pain points that your content is going to cover. A quick note on the content is, if you don't have content yourself, then one of the options is to find or speak to people who do solve the problem for your customers and bring those onto the webinar and see if you can produce an interview style webinar where you ask them questions and they respond with their answers, which would then help your audience overcome some of their challenges. So I'm lucky in this position that I have the lead sourcing playbooks that I've already created. But if you didn't have those, then don't worry about creating content. You could always sit down with somebody, ask some very relevant questions, and get their thoughts and insights and share that with your audience. So going back to cold email, you'd want to make sure that you've researched your ideal customer profiles and your personas, and you can do that by looking for them on LinkedIn. That can be sometimes the simplest process. Or there's a couple of lead sourcing playbooks that I really like called the Social Expansion and the In Market, and you can click on these links to read a blog post about the two. And then you can use tools like LeadIQ or Seamless or even Hunter.io to find the contact details of the individuals that you've come across on LinkedIn. Then you'd want to segment the list of leads into different campaigns based on where you source them in a spreadsheet. And if I just show you an example of the spreadsheet. So here's what that could look like. So we've got company, website, industry, country, first name, job title, email, source, so where I found this person and what keyword. So I may have seen that Mark in this example was talking about prospecting, and I could use that in my messaging when I reach out to Mark and invite him to the webinar. Now, obviously, you'd have a lot more results in here because you'll have somebody researching it, whether it be yourself, a VA, or a company like TaskDrive. You'd have somebody go through and follow the criteria of the research requirements to build out a list for you to invite people. And then you want to personalize your message and focus on the persona pain points. So as you're inviting people to this webinar, the ideal way of writing emails, especially in 2020, is to personalize it as much as you can. However, there are times where you may not have the time or resources to personalize it on an individual level. So I'd always default and fall back to personalizing emails based on the persona pain points. And I'll show you a framework that you can use for that in your cold email. But before we go on, now that you have done your research, you've got a list of people, you want to set up your email sequence in Reply. And Reply is a really, really good cold email platform. There are a number of other ones out there, so you don't have to use this one. But what I really like about Reply is the integrations it has via Zapier. Other tools that you could try could be Mailshake, Lemlist. They're a lot more affordable in terms of the cold email campaigns. You also have FrontSpin, SalesLoft, Outreach, slightly more expensive, more for the enterprise, but if you have the budget, then they are also great tools. And what you can see here are a number of steps that I've already set up. And on day one, we send an email, and then we also view the LinkedIn profile of the individual, because remember, we've got that in our research here. And then on 3 days or 2 days after the first email, then you'd want to send a follow-up, and then maybe on the few days after, send another follow-up, and so on and so on. So here's an example of one of the videos, one of the emails that you could write. You can see here I'm using personalization in the subject line, and then I'm asking a question to really pique curiosity. I've also got the merge tag here for first name, and the framework I'm using here in this email is the pain, agitation, and solution, or pain, agitates, and provide the solution. So this isn't the best copy. I wouldn't actually send this out, but I just put this together for this example. But you can see that I'm saying for most sales organizations, sourcing leads is an extremely time-consuming task. That's the pain. And I'm going to agitate it by saying not only is it a distraction, but in most cases, the lead source are not actively buying. So it's more important than ever to look for triggers and signals that suggest a prospect may have an intent to purchase soon. We're hosting a webinar which covers 14 lead sourcing playbooks that help sales teams uncover leads in creative yet efficient ways. Would you like me to send over the link? Again, not the most perfect of copy, but hopefully you can see that I'm using the pain, the agitate, and solution, and the solution being the webinar that we're putting on. You might be asking, why am I not sending the link to the webinar? A number of reasons for this, some of them technical, some of them more psychological. From a technical point of view, you don't want to include too many links in your cold email because it can hit the spam triggers. You also don't want to, the other thing that you want to do is get replies. So the more replies you get for your messages, the more that it tells the spam filters that these emails aren't spam. So by asking the question, would you like me to send over the link? People can reply and say, yes, please, or they could reply and say, no, thanks. Even if it is a no, it's still a good thing for you in terms of your deliverability. The second reasons, or the other reasons why we don't want to send the link is, number one, I don't want to assume that this person wants to receive this content. They may have read it, or they may already know it, or this might not be an issue for them. So I don't want to make that assumption. And the reason being is I don't want to create a negative connotation or experience for this individual. So that is another reason why you don't want to just assume that people are interested. And I think we may all have been there before, where you receive LinkedIn messages and emails where people are just pitching, sending you a link to their demo, sending you a one-pager about their services, and you've not asked for it. And that's just not how you build relationships in 2020. Another reason that I like Reply is that it actually gives you an idea or an indication about what your chances are to receive a response. You can see that the subject line length is short, which is good. The word count is pretty short. Reading level is a bit high. Positivity, so this is a little bit negative, so I may want to put more of a positive spin on it. And I've used a couple of words like only and sales, so I may want to take those words out because they can also trigger the spam filters. But let's just say I'm happy with that. Then in my follow-up email, I haven't actually written any copy here, but the one thing I would say is do not use words like just bumping this up to the top of your email or just checking in to see if you received my previous email. Instead, what I would do is share content or share additional value and describe some of the lead sourcing playbooks. I've got 14 that I want to talk about in the webinar. So maybe I could share 1 or 2 of them in the follow-up emails to give some more indication as to the value that they can receive in the webinar. Another reason why you don't want to say just bumping this up or just checking in, if they saw your email the first time and didn't reply, they obviously didn't think it was valuable for them. So don't remind them of that. And also, if they saw your email and if they didn't see your email and they missed it, then don't make them feel bad for missing it. We have very, very busy inboxes these days. So don't be afraid to follow up, but always follow up with additional value, not just ways to get people to bump it up at the top of their list, because I don't want anybody bumping any more emails to the top of my list personally. So you would continue to set up your sequence like this, and most of these tools work in a very similar way. When you are setting this up for the first time, which I can't show you now, you are also asked to select the time zones that you would like to send the email. So in this one, this is sending out to San Francisco, and it's Monday through till Friday and at certain times. And you'd also be asked to add some people into the sequence. That's not always, it doesn't always work in that order, but most email campaign software like this would be ask you to write the emails, set up the sequence, and then select the people that you want to send it to. Now, a quick note on why we're using Reply or Mailshake or Lemlist or Outreach is because these platforms are designed specifically for cold email outreach. Do not use tools like Mailshake or ActiveCampaign or ConvertKit to send out cold emails. The main reason being is those emails from ConvertKit, ActiveCampaign are email service providers, and you're within their terms of service, you are only allowed to send emails to people who have given consent for you to send those emails, and it's sent via their servers most of the times as well. So you're actually going against their terms of service if you do so. So always use an outbound cold email software like Reply, because it actually sends these emails from your inbox or from your actual mail account. A very important distinction there. I've seen many companies struggle with deliverability and then also lose access to the tools when they're using an ESP. So we're jumping through this quite quickly, but I wanted to keep this video as short as possible. Now that we've got our emails ready to go, what we want to do is connect our webinar platform to our CRM, as well as Google Sheets to Reply.io. And I'll show you how to set up the integrations. So I've jumped into Zapier here, and as you can see, I've connected. Let me go back and start this from scratch. Bear with me. So I'm going to make a Zap. So Zapier is a tool that allows you to connect two different softwares together, and it kind of glues them together. So it receives information from one tool, puts that in the middle, and then it pushes that information to the next tool. And it almost works like a translation service, if you will. So the two tools that we're trying to connect now are Demio. And if you haven't authenticated your Demio account, it will ask you to at this step. However, I've done that before. And I want to create my trigger event, which is a new webinar registration. So now I'm going to choose my Demio account and click continue. And it's actually going to ask you to pick which event you want it to connect to. Now, as you saw, there were two different events because I had to recreate one. I think this is the original one. No, this is the original one. So I'm going to click that one, click continue. I'm going to test and continue, and it should pull through one of the registrants. It has, so that's been successful. So now that Demio is connected, I'm going to connect my Pipedrive, which is the CRM I'm using. I'm not saying that you have to use Pipedrive, it just happens to be the CRM that we're using. Fortunately, it's already connected, and I'm going to choose my action, which is to create a person. And then I'm going to choose an account. So it's this one here. And once I click continue, it should connect. I'm sorry, when they open up in a new window, it seems to shut Loom down. So I've connected my account. I'm going to click continue. And then here's where I can customize the person that I want to insert. Now it automatically pulls through the name or the fields from the forms that we created in Demio. So I'm going to first name, John. Owner, I'm going to assign that to myself in this case. I'm going to leave organization blank because we're not requiring company name. So I'm just going to leave that blank for now. Email, we can pull that through from Demio. And what I'm looking for here is campaign or outreach campaign. So what I would really want to do is maybe it's not outreach campaign, but I would want to make sure that I'm tagging these people as the Demio, as the webinar registrants. So I'd need to set up a custom field in my CRM if I haven't already done that. But for the purpose of this, I'm actually just going to give them the label of warm lead. So I'll be able to see those people in Pipedrive that have the label of warm lead. And like I said, it would be a good idea to have the name of the webinar in there as well, especially if you're hosting multiple webinars. So test and continue. Done. Turned it on. Now, what I'd always recommend you do is sign up with an extra or a different email address and just test that this Zap works. It may take a couple of minutes to go through. If you're using the free Zapier, it actually takes 15 minutes because it doesn't search for it automatically. So register again for the webinar, wait 15 minutes, and then see if they've appeared in your CRM. So now that's the first Zap set up. What I want to do now is connect Google Sheets to Reply. And what I'm aiming to do here is that whenever a new row is added, or whenever we add a new row to a spreadsheet, then it automatically pulls this information through to reply.io and adds them into a campaign. So to do so, I'm going to go back to Zapier. I can see that this is on, and I can just click here. I want to create a new one, make a Zap. And again, I'll follow the same instructions. So this time it's Google Sheets. And I want to trigger it when a new spreadsheet row. Continue. This is already connected to my Google Sheets. So if I search here and then search for sample results. No, sorry, I have to first of all do my Drive. Just update. I can search for it a little bit easier. Continue. So now I get to choose a spreadsheet. It's found it already, which is great. Now worksheet. Now this is quite an important step. Now as you or your researcher will be going through this spreadsheet, they will be adding new rows as they go along. However, the row won't be complete yet because they're filling out all the fields. So what I recommend that you do is you create, that's very odd, create a new sheet. Create a new sheet with the same headings. For some reason, I can't use the loom, move the loom thing out the way. Let's try and shut that down. And just call it the to import. The reason you do this is that once you have a number of or a bulk amount of your leads, you can then add them to this tab within the spreadsheet, and then that will trigger them to go into Reply. So what I like to do here at TaskDrive is do that in bulk. So maybe our researchers will enrich 20, 30 rows, and then once they hit 30, we'll move, and we've verified the information, checked that the emails exist. We will then move them into ready to import. But I'll continue setting up the trigger here. So you'll see now that I have results and ready to import. And hit continue. Now, if I test and continue, it will say that there isn't an existing information because that sheet is empty. So let's just see what comes up in the results. And now I'm going to connect it to Reply. And I want to create/update person and push to campaign. Continue. Choose my account, which I've already got connected. If you don't already have them connected, then you would need to go through the verification process like we did for Demio. Campaign ID, let's just see. Should be able to put up the campaign. Just a note there, I changed my password in Reply recently, so I had to re-authenticate, but I've got the campaign there. And then I want to push. I'm going to pull through the email from step 1, and this email will be here because this is the field in my research which has the email address. So let me go back in. Email, first name, just type that in here. And I really don't need to add anything else. However, if I had created a number of personalized merge fields in the spreadsheet, then I would want to connect them to the custom field here. And as you saw me add earlier, I actually added this heading. So that's how you would get that personalized field. You can click continue, test and continue. And why this hasn't worked is because I don't actually have, I do have someone in here, but it hasn't refreshed just yet. So let me just go and troubleshoot this. So to troubleshoot, I'm just going to add a new column, use David, our co-founder. Okay, now this new row has been added. In theory, it should work. And this sometimes can be the trick with Zapier. Sometimes it doesn't trigger straight away. So I'm going to retest. Okay, in this case, what I'll often do is start the Zap again. So let me just go back. I'm going to pause, and then let me just show you how it is when it's ready. So I've reset this, and I'm going to continue, and it should pick it up this time. Test and continue. For some reason, it's struggling to go through. However, when I check my example, I can see that David, which was the field that I added, has been added in to the sequence. So there we can see how we can really speed up the process of the research for when we are adding new leads and then automatically adding them into a sequence. So it takes out the manual work for you. Now that we've put together our cold email campaigns, we've got our webinar link set up and ready so people can register. We're ready to promote it. Now there are a number of different ways that you can, a number of different channels that you could use to promote your webinar. I'm just focusing on a few here. For me, cold email is one of the best ways to outreach because you can send personalized messages or persona personalized messages to individuals that you've researched. And that's really what we specialize here at TaskDrive. However, you can add those people to your campaigns, but also check your responses as well, because as I mentioned before, if you're not getting many replies, you may need to improve your content and the messaging within the email. Now, it's not just cold email, it's not just prospects. You can also send it to your customers and add them to your email sequence. Send people that are in your pipeline at the moment to your sequence. Look at your closed lost deals and add those people to the sequence as well. Just because they're not working with you doesn't mean that they do not have the challenges that your webinar may be able to help them solve. And also any partners or affinity partners that you may have, you can also add those into the same sequence. Depending, your customers, you may want to send a specialized email or a slightly different email than the generic cold email. But there are all different channels that you can, all different segments of people that you can use to target with your cold email. Then also you've got social media and community. So post on your LinkedIn profile and amplify this message by asking your colleagues to share the post. You can post it in relevant groups, share in any Slack communities you belong to. You can share it on Twitter. And you can also send messages to first connections on LinkedIn. You can also run an outbound campaign on LinkedIn where you connect with second and third connections. And once they've accepted, maybe you can send them a message to see if they're interested in attending the webinar. The key here is to not pitch a product, or do suggest or do mention the webinar and the content that you'll be sharing and why you feel that it would be important for them to attend. So you've also got an option of paid advertising. This is definitely optional. Not everybody has the budgets to do so. But if you do have the budget for paid advertising, you can use it to reach a wider audience and potentially a much bigger audience than you can research yourself. So I've provided some links in here for step-by-step guides for Facebook, for LinkedIn, and Twitter. If there is another social channel that you'd want to advertise on, simply just searching channel or Quora Advertising 2020, and that will give you a guide. That's not really the purpose of this video, but hopefully these links are helpful for you. So Now let's fast forward a little bit. We've produced the webinar, we hosted it, we had a number of people that signed up. As you saw when we set up the event in Demio, people that attended, the people that registered get an automatic email once the webinar has finished with the replay link. However, you may want to send up a follow-up email and offer a free consultation with those individuals that did attend. And in Demio, you'll be able to see which people attended live versus which people that didn't attend. For those that didn't attend, you can still send them a follow-up email. I wouldn't mention the fact that they didn't attend. They may have just signed up for the webinar so they could watch the replay. And I do that quite often, especially when webinars are across various different time zones. So don't allude to the fact that they didn't show up, but you can still provide them with the replay link. And you can also add them to a retargeting campaign and target them with ads after the webinar. You've also got an option for those that didn't reply. So the people that you initially reached out to that didn't actually reply, it might be worth, and it depends on your audience, but it might be worth sending them an email with the link to the webinar and say, hey, appreciate that you weren't able to join the webinar. We received some great feedback about the content, and I still think it would be valuable and worth me sending it to you. So here's the link. You can also send messages on LinkedIn to people who didn't reply, and also add them to a retargeting campaign. Again, that does cost an additional budget to advertise, but it could be worth it, especially if your deal size is large enough to justify the cost per acquisition. And lastly, what a lot of people don't do is they don't leverage the content that they've just produced. Let's say that your presentation is 40 slides or 30 slides. Each one of those slides is a potential social media post, which you could use across LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, whichever channels best suit your audience. So use that content and use those assets from the campaign and promote that across social channels for the months ahead. And really with 40 slides and different variations of text and social media posts to accompany the slides, you can really leverage that to go very far and add that into your scheduled tweets, posts, and shares for the rest of the months. And as you can see, in summary, really, it's not too challenging to set up a webinar. I think in total this video is probably about 40 minutes. Unfortunately, I had some Loom issues, so it did chop it into two. But we saw setting up after you've planned the content and you've worked out who the audience is, and then putting together the actual webinar page and registration page was very simple, especially using a tool like Demio, which I do highly recommend. And then putting together the messaging for the cold emails, sending those cold emails out. Now, obviously, those cold emails are if you're researching on a regular basis, you'll be adding new people to that sequence each day. So that will have a compounding effect on how many people reach that message. You're also taking advantage of other channels that you could use to reach out to them. And then you're following up after the webinar with those people that either attended or didn't attend, those people that never replied to you, because you could still reach out to them as well. But again, there is a fine line between harassment and sending valuable content. But if you genuinely produce a great piece of content which helps them achieve their success gaps or overcome the challenges that they face, then I believe that justifies that you could send them another email. And I hope this is helpful. And last of all, what you could see is you could do this every month or twice a month, and the amount of content that you can produce and then leverage in the future off the back of just one webinar is really, really compounding, because you have so much to share. You could constantly refer people back to the webinar. So oftentimes when people sign up for a demo or a free consultation with TaskDrive, after the first call, I'll send them links to content. I'll send them links to webinars so they can get a real understanding and flavor of what it is that we do and how we do it, and how we do it differently to maybe our competitors, or just the value that we're prepared to give first without expecting anything in return. So I hope this helps. I'll make sure that this document is available to download. And I guess my call to action for you is, if you have any questions about any of this, please do ask me in the comments, or you can email me at mark@taskdrive.com. And also, I've been in sales marketing for 12 years now, and my experience is pretty broad. So if there is another guide that you'd like me to produce like this in quite a minimum viable product or webinar on a different topic or a different strategy, please let me know. I'd be more than happy to create this content as I'm stuck self-isolating in Lisbon in Portugal. Thank you very much. I really hope this was valuable.